This is Newsroom on SABC News. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name is Eben Jansen and this show is broadcast live every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Highlights are repeated at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with a whole rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning. We also stream live on YouTube between 9 and 10 a.m. every day. And the entire show, well, you can then watch it on our YouTube channel at your leisure when you have a bit of time. Today, the Oscar Pistorius trial is set to be adjourned a little bit later until the 5th of May. We'll get some analysis on the last 2 weeks of the trial as well. And then we'll check on road safety preparations for the coming Easter long weekend. That should be interesting. First, though, let's take a look at the news headlines. The trial of Oscar Pistorius continues at the High Court in Pretoria this morning with the defence's expert witness, Roger Dixon, expected to return to the stand. Dixon had a tough day in the witness box yesterday, with State Prosecutor Gerrie Nel questioning his credibility. The judge has granted a request for a postponement, and the trial will break from the end of proceedings today until the 5th of next month. President Jacob Zuma's visit to Limpopo continues today. Yesterday, he addressed residents of Malamulele who expressed their displeasure about government's refusal to grant them their municipality by booing the president. Foreign ministers from East and West will try to defuse the Ukraine crisis at talks in Geneva, Switzerland today. The talks will bring the ministers of Russia, Ukraine and the United States together with the European Union's foreign policy chief. Ukraine is struggling to reassert its authority in eastern towns largely controlled by armed pro-Russian separatists. Today will mark the 25th day of the trial of Oscar Pistorius that started more than 7 weeks ago in the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria on what was the 3rd of March. Judge Thokozile Masipa yesterday granted an application by the prosecution for the trial to be postponed until the 5th of May, 2 days before the national election here in South Africa. Barry Roo has already indicated that the defence will need until at least the 16th of May to wrap up their case. Nel will this morning continue with Dixon's cross-examination in an attempt to further discredit him as a reliable witness, but it remains to be seen whether or not Roo will call his fourth witness, possibly Johan Stander, to testify before the adjournment or only when the trial restarts on the 5th. Joining us, as always, from the North Gauteng High Court this morning, Griselda Lewis. Good morning, Griselda.
Well, a very good morning, to you, Eben. As you can see, very lucky again. Oscar Pistorius arriving here at court on day 25 of his murder trial, being escorted into court there. The media tried to get a shot of him. There's a hug, one of the supporters hugging Oscar Pistorius. So the lady who was hugging him has been here for a number of days now, and every time Oscar Pistorius arrives, the athlete does acknowledge that she's here. We've seen quite a number of these supporters come through over the past few days. Also, a lady that I spoke to this morning who was here to support Riva Steenkamp's family, saying that she takes at least 10 minutes out of her morning before she heads to work to come and stand here and show support for Riva Steenkamp's family. But yes, 25 days later, Eben, and we're expecting a break today, a postponement in the case today. As you said, we'll return on the 5th of May. It's been 25 grueling days here outside the North Gauteng High Court, and of course inside, as we saw Oscar Pistorius take to the stand and give his version of what happened on that morning. We saw him come under intense scrutiny as well, and then this morning we're expecting Roger Dixon again to take the stand, to be cross-examined again on his testimony. We're expecting that to be quite grueling again, as you saw yesterday, Gerrie Nel tearing into him, asking him about his qualifications and whether he's even qualified to speak on the range of issues that he gave in his testimony.
Griselda, we're going into recess. It's been a long trek for everyone involved with the case. I'm sure everyone, including the media, must be looking forward to this little recess that's coming up.
Well, a little recess, yes, Eben, but we know there's the all-important elections that are coming up in the country. So for journalists, the job is really never done. And straight from here, I guess it's deployment at different areas around the country in anticipation of this all-important election coming up on the 7th of May. So no rest for the wicked.
And wicked we are in this business. Just quickly tell me about yesterday. It was a tough day for Mr. Dixon under cross-examination. He was discredited, really, as an expert witness, wasn't it?
Well, it certainly looked that way, yeah, but I mean, following what many analysts had said was a poor showing by Oscar Pistorius during cross-examination, where his testimony was torn apart by Rinel. Then we have now the forensic geologist, Roger Dixon, who was brought in. He was asked about his qualifications within the South African Police Service. It all sounded very extensive. He went into his evidence, his testimony into what could have happened in the bathroom, in the toilet where Reeva Steenkamp was shot dead. And straight after that, we saw Rinel ask him, for example, he was brought in to do tests on sound, on light, and he gave his testimony. And soon after that, Rinel tore into his testimony, asking him if he was a sound expert. He had to concede that he was not. Asked him what he did to measure, basically, or try and assess the light at the home of Oscar Pistorius versus the light coming. I'm being informed at the moment, Eben, just to turn around this way to see who it is that is arriving there. There you have it. The defence's Barry Rue.
I put it to
They're
you. Arriving
with his team.
I put it
That's
to you,
right,
Barry Rue.
I put it to you. That's right, Barry Rue arriving this morning. Well, he's always smiling, I guess, for the cameras. He really doesn't really show any emotion. I guess that's what lawyers do, not showing any emotion, even if his team has had a very bad day. We're expecting Rinel again, as we said, to continue his cross-examination of the geologist, the forensic geologist. So even though, Eben, we're expecting quite a grueling day in court again today, we'll have to see how it pans out and if the next witness will be called today.
Thank you very much, Griselda. I'd also be smiling if I was Barry Rue at 100,000 South African rand a day, going into day 25. Thank you very much, Griselda Lewis. That's Griselda. Of course, you can follow Griselda on Twitter. She tweets live from the court throughout the day. If you want to know up to the minute what's happening inside the courtroom, Griselda Lewis on Twitter. That's a person that you should be following. Just to recap, proceedings in the Oscar Pistorius trial are expected to be postponed after hearings end today until the 5th of May. 2 days before the national election here in South Africa. Prosecution had sought the postponement earlier this week to avoid scheduling conflicts with other cases, they say. The Pistorius trial has already run far beyond the 3 weeks scheduled when it opened in early March and has generated 2,000 pages of detailed testimony, Judge Thokozile Masipa said. To recap and sum up the latest 2 weeks, we are joined by our legal expert, Bernard Hotz, who is a director from Worksman's Attorneys. Good morning to you, Bernard. Thanks for being back with us.
Morning, Eben. Pleasure. Thank you.
The trial sort of moved on a little bit now, but I wanted to just backtrack and get the legalese out of you as to Oscar's performance on the stand and then the changes that sort of happened with his testimony.
Eben, the first thing that is very important to realize, and we've seen this on TV, is no matter who you are, no matter what your qualifications are, to submit yourself to cross-examination is a very humbling experience.
Yeah.
And what we saw coming out in Oscar's cross-examination, leaving aside the various inconsistencies, bearing in mind his defense is what we call putative self-defense.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's very important to understand what does that mean. So if self-defense, I see you coming to attack me. You've got a gun or a knife in your hand, and I pull out a gun and I shoot you in self-defense. I intend to shoot you because you are going to pose a threat to my life. Putative self-defense is if, for instance, you put your hand in your pocket and I believe that you're going to pull out a gun or a knife. In fact, you pull out a lighter, but I believe you're going to pull out a gun or a knife and I intend to shoot you because I believe that my life is in danger. Mental state, I intend to do that. Yeah. But what Oscar seems to have said, which caused great consternation from perhaps his legal team, and which was pounced on by Rinel, is he said he didn't intend to. It was accidental.
Yeah.
Now that that runs contrary to putative self-defense.
Yeah.
So I find that very interesting, leaving aside the other various inconsistencies that were pointed out.
Things like responsibility crept up continuously through the time that he spent on the stand. His refusal to accept responsibility. How does that, and then the other inconsistencies, how do you think that will be viewed by the judge and her assessors in this case?
Look, bearing in mind this, the judge has to consider the evidence as a lawyer and apply the law. Of course, there's emotion that goes into it, and of course, she will be sensitive to the fact that it is a traumatic experience that he's going through. No. But she is considering, this is what your plea is. This is the evidence that you've given. Yes, emotion creeps into it, but she has to analyze it as a lawyer. And I think that there are a number of troubling issues which I think the judge most certainly has picked up on.
Now, Oscar has refused during his testimony to appear on camera. We've seen images of Reeva's head blown, half of it blown away, really, graphics, pictures. How does that affect the case and public opinion, I would think, in a way as well?
Yeah, but the difference with this case is that it's being showcased in the media. If it were not, and if it were carried out in the normal context, in the way in which I carry on in court every single day, to exhibit those photographs in court is standard procedure.
Yeah.
The fact that it is in the media now, there has to be a degree of sensitivity, but the state is saying, I cannot curtail the way in which I'm going to present my case because of the element of sensitivity.
And how do you, Gerrie, now we see him on screen now, what do you make of the case that is put forward against Oscar Pistorius until now?
I think that I don't relish anybody who has the invidious task of walking into that witness box and submitting themselves to cross-examination. I think that Gerrie Nel knows exactly what he wants to show.
Yeah.
And, cross-examination is never a perfect art. It doesn't mean because somebody is aggressive that they're doing well.
Yeah.
One's got to analyze what questions are being put to the witness and how is the witness answering those questions.
Yeah.
You could ask it in a soft voice, you could ask it in a loud voice, but it's the analysis of those questions and answers. And I think Gerrie Nel is poking a number of holes.
Your response to the complaints that were laid against Gerrie Nel at the Human Rights Commission, there were quite a few people that were outraged at his cross-examination of Oscar, but that's also standard procedure, isn't it?
I think, first of all, speaking personally, it's nice in a country where, unfortunately, we have very high crime levels to see that we do have a prosecutorial service that takes crime seriously and wishes to prosecute crime. At the end of the day, the court has to decide innocence or guilt, but It's nice to see a prosecutor handling a case with such passion. Second of all, in relation to cross-examination, it is standard procedure. If you are going to argue that a witness is lying, you have to say to that witness, I put it to you that you are lying. What is your comment to that? And then you close it in argument. So the Human Rights Commission correctly dismissed the first complaint because they said it's being dealt with in the forum of a court and the judge is in control.
Yeah. That should lay that one clear. Final question. Oscar's time on the stand. There are two aspects to it. He's obviously got to win the legal argument and then the argument in the court of public opinion. How do you think, after watching him for 7 days on the stand, how did he do? Do you think he's proved his innocence?
The judge has got a hard task. Obviously, everybody has their own personal opinion. As a lawyer, in analysing his evidence, and I try and remove myself from the emotion, because the one thing that was clear to me as a litigator is that he had been prepared to give his evidence.
Yeah.
And he became argumentative. It was a rehearsed version. Every time he was asked a question that he hadn't prepared on, that's when you saw the real person coming forward. So as a lawyer, I was analysing that, and I find that his version is somewhat problematical on a number of respects.
That is very interesting. Bernard Hotz, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm sure you'll join us again before the end of this trial, but thanks for joining us today. That's, Director at Worksman's Attorneys, Bernard Hotz, joining us this morning. Let's take a quick look at what you are saying about the case on social media. Of course, everyone's had an opinion over the last month or so. 25 days it is to be exact today. Bernard Bergstedt says, here lies Mr. Dixon, caught between a rock and a hard place. Gerry Null has rocked your world, no doubt. Yeah, that's sort of the belief at the moment. Tabo Andres Jive says, my lady, the instrument I used there were my eyes. I like that. That came out of court yesterday. And Lisa says, starting my day watching Oscar Pistorius trial from yesterday, Null is unrelenting like a dog with a bone, only doing his work. And there we have from Barbara Spence a lovely picture of Reeva Steenkamp, the late Reeva Steenkamp, and Oscar Pistorius. Heartbreaking, tragic accidents, he says. So incredibly sad. Rest in peace. You were loved indeed. That's Barbara Spence, believing it was a tragic accident. There are many supporters of Oscar Pistorius, of course. Let's have a look at what's happening on our Facebook page. You can go there if you want. Well, week 7 of the Oscar Pistorius trial. The media frenzy simply hasn't slowed. Yesterday, we saw more coverage than the day the trial opened. There you have one of the graphics that you can get from Data Driven Insights on our Facebook page. The biggest piece by far is Gerry Null's opening of cross-examination on the 9th of April. You can see the big spike there. The stats are all compiled by Data Driven Insights Africa, and it's all on our Facebook page. Some real interesting reading it makes for. And Lonman says more than 1,000 employees have not visited clinics to receive treatment for HIV/AIDS as the strike in the platinum sector drags on. Then, now, on a lighter note, and in the spirit of Easter, we all know parents mean only well this time of year, hiding Easter eggs for their kids and telling tales of the Easter Bunny. But what happens if you are the parent who's responsible for one of the biggest frights of your child's life? Have a look at this.
Look at your pretty eggs.
Mommy, can we pick them out?
No, don't bother them yet. They're still drying.
Please don't put your children through that over this Easter weekend. Keep it safe, especially on the roads, and we'll talk about that after a short little break right here on Newsroom on SABC News.
You missed the Oscar Pistorius trial? Watch the update and highlights of key moments in the trial on SABC News Channel 404 every night at 9 o'clock and at 5 a.m. All local, all global, all the time.
Welcome back. The Easter long weekend is with us again, and this period is the most challenging in the road traffic management calendar. Thousands of motorists comprising of holidaymakers, migrant workers, religious pilgrims and freight transport operators will be travelling the length and breadth of our major arterial road networks to various destinations around the country. The road carnage increases during this period, placing a huge burden on emotional and financial costs to the affected families and the economy as a whole. South Africa has, as a member of the United Nations Road Safety Collaboration, is expected to respond effectively to the 2020 50% road accident reduction target. To reach the target, every effort must be done to ensure that road safety initiatives are impactful, visible and sustainable to bring about a dramatic behaviour change amongst road users. What will happen between today and next week, Tuesday, will have a big impact on the 2020 target. Now, in studio, we have quite a few gentlemen this morning. Taxi organisation Santaco represented by Bafana Magagula. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
The Justice Project, South Africa's national chairperson, Howard Dembowski, is with us again. Good morning, Howard.
Good morning.
And then the Chief Operating Officer, Gilberto Martins, from the Road Traffic Management Corporation. He's also with us. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Gilberto, let's start with you. You saw what I read about 2020 target as a partner on the UN's collaboration. Is this the wrong time of the year to talk about this?
Well, I think this is an ongoing project, so it's nothing new. It's over a 10-year span. And I think the road safety issues should be spoken about every day. So I think we always say it's not about a festive season, because certainly the situation today is that over 4 days, many people will be on our roads as opposed to a period of a month. So heightened traffic, heightened road users. So certainly it's always opportune to talk about road safety.
Heightened tempers, is that part of the big problem, Howard? You seem to be the man who's calling for calm, always calm down on the roads.
Tempers, bravado, impatience, arrogance, you name it. We're going to see it out on our roads. We see it every single day of the week, never mind at festive seasons, etc., etc. And I agree with Gilberto. The fact is we need to be talking about this every single day, but we need to not just be talking about it, we need to be doing as well. Because you ask a question, how far are we along with respect to achieving a 50% reduction in road crashes by 2020? Well, not very far at all. And I'm not going to embarrass my colleagues here, but quite frankly, this weekend's not going to make that much difference to it unless there are no crashes.
Bafana, for you, though, this weekend is big. There's a lot of pilgrimages going on. There's a lot of migrant workers who are travelling home. There are a lot of holiday makers who will be interacting with the taxi industry. What's your plan for this weekend?
Well, already we are on the road with our Hlokomela program, which we started in 2010. Already we have started during early this week, and we are on the road encouraging drivers to take care and drive as safe as possible. Also encouraging our passengers to report any misconduct that they notice from our drivers. We are aware that there's many people who are already on their way to their holiday, some to churches using our taxis. And, we put it to the hands of the drivers that those lives are their responsibilities. And we really appeal to them to really take care of them.
Gilberto, are we seeing a change in behaviour? We see there one of the most famous little accident clips played live out on TV while we were interviewing one of the officials, I think in the Northwest. But are we seeing a change in the behaviour of South African motorists, and is it a tangible thing? Are the campaigns making a difference?
I think behaviour, being a personalised issue, is always difficult to measure. And I think this is really an issue which is hard to come up. You tackle it with campaigns, and I'll give you a simple example, the buckle up scenario.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that certainly, if someone gets into a vehicle and immediately buckles up, we've explained it and we've told people this is your first precaution that you should do. It's a 30% chance of you not being killed in a crash. It can save 30% of our fatalities. But unfortunately, as Howard rightly says, it's once people are behind the wheel, they believe they have the rights and everybody else must be careful, must be reasonable, must be responsible. And they're able to say, well, we don't have to. So a very simple thing, you will be doing 120 and someone will come past you at 140 kilometers an hour and you'll think, well, if he can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, well, I will stay within the limit because there's a reason why it's that limit.
The carnage counter, Howard, I want to put the carnage counter up and I want you to just talk us through it a little bit, especially the cost.
Well, yes, because the cost seems to be something that people can relate to.
Yeah.
People dying and having their limbs chopped off, they don't really relate to. They relate to money because we're really a capitalist state. But at the end of the day, this counter is very close to reality. The fact is that it has been worked out on algorithms that work on bodies in mortuaries. They are not statistics of people who die immediately at the roadside, because a lot of time your crash victims die up to 30 days later, and those are in fact measured in this. So this is pretty close to reality. And you want to stop this. Either you're going to have to cut the electricity supply off, because that will stop us, or you're going to have to stop all this nonsense on our roads. And the biggest cop-out of all, I'm going to say this with my brother from the Taxi Association here, is to turn around and blame minibus taxis. Because if we have a look at some of the video footage that we've got,
just show us. Let's just have a look at some of your video footage. I think you've got a truck accident that you want us to look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we have a look at that? There we go.
And we can call this an accident. You see how he just cut in front of a motorcyclist, and he keeps on driving and going great guns whilst everybody else is stopping, as you noticed there. And the motorcyclist comes along to the red traffic light. You'll see that he puts his hand up to actually stop traffic here, because he's noticed something that we couldn't actually see in this footage. You'll see his hand comes up just now, and he will move off, and you're going to see a very lucky, I suppose, in one way, motorist who was affected by that truck driving like that. Okay. A wonderful advert for ABI, a wonderful advert for Coca-Cola, but this is reality on our roads. And there's another reality on our roads. People love to say that women are better drivers than men. Well, we got a little photograph from yesterday, okay, on the N14 between Beyers Naudé and Malibongwe, of a motor vehicle, nice little, tidy little sports car, which I'm sure we're going to put up there, which was being driven at the princely speed of 260 kilometers an hour into the pillar of a bridge. Unbelievably, this lady survived. She was seriously injured, but she survived. But this is the kind of damage that gets done to motor cars. And we say, just because your car can do that speed doesn't mean you must do that speed. We need to start becoming responsible on our roads.
The message to all road users and from you guys at Santaco for this weekend, but also going forward, what's the word?
Well, the word, especially to our taxi drivers on the road, is that please make sure that before you get into that vehicle, just make sure the vehicle is fully roadworthy, tires in good condition, your brakes are in working order, and also make sure that you are not tired when you are behind the steering. When you feel tired, just pull off the road and take a walk, and then come back and then start driving again, and never try to even take a sip and think now it is little, it won't make you drunk. Even that sip can cost lives.
Gilberto, I want to ask you about life becoming cheap on South African roads. Is that a fact, or is that an exaggeration?
I think when you're behind the wheel, you do not realize the cost of life to be on that road. You're seeing vehicles from enormous costs. It's not a vehicle is not a cheap investment. It can be more than a house. And unfortunately, when you're behind the wheel, and I think Howard and Bafana's right, you tend to forget all logic. So you believe you can have 2 drinks because it won't affect you. And so you're always right. And unfortunately, it starts off from the baseline, because you will find that you will sit in a vehicle and there will be a child next to you who will not be in the child seat or even buckled up. And when you approach that person, not to legally take action against them, simply say to someone, look, your child is standing on the front seat, it's a danger.
It's a risk.
They actually take offense to you telling them what to do. So clearly, when you're in the vehicle, you can criticize. You can say, gee, people are driving badly. But when you're behind that vehicle, your behavior tends to go down that similar line.
Yeah, I know. My behavior also deteriorates behind the wheel a little bit, especially the language deteriorates when behind the wheel, which is, I think, a very South Africanism. But I wanted to ask you about, we talk about alcohol on the road, but the thing we don't talk about is the other kinds of stimulants that people take on the road. We've got this big fight against alcohol, but, when people take 3, 4, 5 Red Bulls, I know on long-distance trips myself, after the 3rd Red Bull, you start to see, especially in dodgy light conditions, you start to see double. How do we manage that?
Yeah, people need to be very careful of taking artificial stimulants, caffeine in particular, because caffeine works like this. It gets you to that very alert, hyper-alert stage. But when you come down like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
And the fact is that you can actually fall straight to sleep from there. But there are other things that are of great concern. Youngsters have come to believe, and rightly so, unfortunately, that you will not get nailed in a drink-driving roadblock if you've taken ecstasy or dacha, etc., because it doesn't show up in a breathalyzer. Okay? And that is an unfortunate truth in this country. And we need to urgently start moving towards testing people for drugs, because there is a big difference between prosecuting a person for drugs and prosecuting a person for alcohol. Because with alcohol, we have to have a limit. With drugs, any amount of drugs in your system or on your person is a criminal offence for which you can be prosecuted successfully.
Public transport is always seen as a solution or part of the solution. What are your views as a taxi industry about making the roads safer?
Well, that's why we came with the program called Hlokomela. And I so wish that each and every driver and each and every owner of the vehicle could, in his mind, plant this Hlokomela and see, when he says Hlokomela, and see a life being the most important aspect, and also realize that life you take away is the life that brings bread or put bread on your table.
Yeah. Finally, Gilberto, you are the Road Traffic Management Corporation here in South Africa. The final word belongs to you. What are you saying to motorists in general, and then to motorists ahead of what will be a very busy period on our roads?
Well, what we're saying is that, one, we've identified the busy roads. We've identified those routes which we know are going to be with high volumes of vehicles. Therefore, in conjunction with our provinces, we are saying to the public, we are going to be on those roads to ensure that law enforcement is effectively done. And also, I think what's important is the fitness of your car and the fitness of the person behind it. And what we're appealing to all those drivers is certainly they need to respect the rules of the roads, the regulations, and certainly if they do that, they will get to their destination.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I'm sure there are a few nerves about it. Well, we have a very busy weekend. Gilberto Martins from the Road Management Traffic Corporation here in South Africa. Thank you for joining us. Harden Boski from the Justice Project South Africa. And then we've got Bafana Magagula from Santaco, the Taxi Association. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. Of course, court proceedings are about to get underway, but let's have a look at what you are talking about on social media. Rick Nick says, happy holidays, people. Please be extra careful on these roads of ours. I think he wants to say yes. Melster says, I hope it's going to be a good Friday. Yes, it will be a good Friday. Hashtag coloureds. That's out there. Mina says, Easter favourite in South Africa. Pickled fish to be eaten with hot cross buns. Malay cooking Easter. Yes, indeed, that's what we do. My Easter bunny, Easter 2014. Is that a bunny? It looks a little bit burnt anyhow. But keep it coming. We love to interact with you. We love your comments. We love your pictures especially. And if you've got video, you can put it up on our Twitter page, or you can even go to our Facebook page and put it up there. Are we going to the court? We're not going to the court. Court's not really it. So let's take a short break. When we come back, hopefully, Gerinal will be back in business at the North Gauteng High Court.
Coming up this week.
I think it allowed me, being an American, to put like a very different spin on things and give it life and give it some breath. A lot of my favorite directors in America are foreigners that come into the United States and make films. So I think I've always noticed that.
Join Refilwe and Eloise on Film South Africa every Friday at 17:30 CAT.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. We're waiting for day 25 of the Oscar Pistorius murder trial to get underway in the North Gauteng High Court. But while we're waiting, why don't we take a look at the top stories on SABC News at this minute. The trial of Oscar Pistorius continues at the High Court in Pretoria this morning, with the defence's expert witness, Roger Dixon, expected to return to the stand. Dixon had a tough day in the witness box yesterday, with State Prosecutor Gerrie Nel questioning his credibility. The judge has granted a request for a postponement, and the trial will break from the end of proceedings today until the 5th of next month. President Jacob Zuma's visit to Limpopo continues today. Yesterday, he addressed residents of Malamulele who expressed their displeasure about government's refusal to grant them their municipality by booing the president. Foreign ministers from the East and West will try to defuse the Ukraine crisis at talks in Geneva today. The talks will bring the ministers of Russia, Ukraine, and the United States together with the European Union's foreign policy chief. Ukraine is struggling to reassert its authority in eastern towns largely controlled by armed pro-Russian separatists. President Jacob Zuma's visit to Limpopo continues today. Yesterday, he addressed residents of Malamulele who expressed their displeasure about government's refusal to grant them their municipality by booing the president.
A packed stadium before the president's arrival. The area was recently engulfed in unrest as the community demands a separate municipality. These residents used an opportunity to voice their anger. But this did not deter the president from addressing them. He was frank on the challenges faced by this community.
I want to tell you, this matter is going to be resolved. I think we must handle it with care.
Earlier, the president was in Thohoyandou in Limpopo canvassing for votes. He spoke to business leaders, traditional leaders and faith-based groups. Different sectors also pledged their support for the ANC. The president called on South Africans to return the ANC to power as a party that has bought the freedom. He also weighed on the opposition parties.
Freedom of expression, the freedom of speech, the freedom of the media is one of the freedoms we talk about. It's just that they don't always say, we are free now, we're liberated by the ANC.
The president will spend 2 days in Limpopo.
Now, with all the hype surrounding the Oscar Pistorius murder trial, and for that matter, Shrindavani as well, we often forget the real victims in these cases. And in both these cases, they were young women, Riva Steenkamp and Annie Indoka in this case. At the beginning of the trial, we spoke to Lisa Vetten from the Wits Institute of Social and Economic Research about this broader problem of violence against women in this country of ours. We live in a country where violence against women is clear every day. This Pistorius case has become such a sensational attraction. Shouldn't we be dealing with this kind of issue in a sort of broader way of violence against women?
We should, because I think this is a case that is an example of the most common way in which women are murdered or die violently in this country. And so we should be looking at the broader social context of why do we have the problem of domestic violence that we do? And why are the figures not going down? Why, with all that we've done over the last 20 years, is the best that we can produce stagnation? So I think we should be taking the opportunity to ask those broader questions, not just who heard how much, how far were they from the Pistorius house at the time.
Well, what do the numbers say, the research say in South Africa about the way women are killed, often at the hands of their partners, was this the case in the Oscar Pistorius?
Well, we've seen some significant changes between 1999 and 2009 when 2 national studies were done. In 1999, there were 4 women being killed every day by their intimate male partners. In 2009, that number had gone down to 3. But if you look at that from a statistically significant point of view, there's no real difference or improvement. So it's pretty much well stayed the same. So while that has stayed the same, however, the number of women being killed by strangers or men they don't know has gone down quite significantly. What that has now meant is that almost close to 60% of women in South Africa are killed by their intimate male partners. So I think that's the most disturbing change that we've seen in the last decade or so.
A case like this one, very high profile, overshadows pretty much everything else. But the flip side of this coin is that it happens pretty much every day in South Africa, and a lot of it sort of flies under the radar.
Yes, absolutely, and I think that is a challenge we should put to the media, is why does it take a case like this to suddenly remind people that domestic violence is a problem in South Africa? Because I think while we sometimes care a little bit about rape, enough to go out and have the occasional march now and again, people are absolutely indifferent to domestic violence. It doesn't even raise an eyebrow anymore. And I think that is what allows it to continue to fly under the radar, because we make it normal and we make it invisible. So, and in this case, I think what is quite unusual is that somebody actually went to investigate when they heard screaming.
Yeah.
Most people simply turn the other way or wish that the noise would go down.
Well, the one witness said yesterday that, well, we didn't really want to get involved. And I suppose, but when we saw it in the papers and we saw the bail application, that's when we felt morally obliged to do it. And is that very much the case of most people in South Africa?
That is so much the case. We don't want to get involved. It's a private matter. It's between the two of them. And unfortunately, that attitude then also spills over into the police, who will also, they'll arrive, but they'll say, don't the two of you want to sort it out? Do you really want to put him in prison? Don't the two of you want to perhaps just mediate this? And I think that's how we make it normal. I think we've also got to understand this problem within the context of the fact that so many of the organisations which do provide services to the majority of women who can't afford private psychologists and security companies are operating on a very constrained and severe funding cut. So many of them have half the staff that they had 4 years ago, because we did an analysis of what had happened as a result of funding cuts, but they're still trying to do the same amount of work. And obviously your services do deteriorate, the quality does decline, you can't see as many women. So it's all very nice that we tell women to speak out, break the silence, go for help, but if it's not there, it's a waste of their time.
I want to... to cut that interview, that was done 7 weeks ago now. Can you believe that? That's when the trial started, and it deals with the wider problem of gender violence here in South Africa. There's a saying in South Africa, never get involved in other people's business, because tomorrow they'll be friends and they won't be talking to you. But as we see, it's a real pandemic, it seems, in South Africa, and it's our duty to get involved. Of course, we're waiting for the trial to start, or Day 25 to get underway. Mr. Dixon is expected to still be on the stand when the trial starts this morning. We're waiting for Judge Masipa to come out of chambers. While we wait, let's just recap what happened yesterday at Oscar Pistorius' murder trial. It will continue at the High Court in Pretoria this morning, with defence's expert witness Roger Dixon expected to return to the stand. We've got good news now. We're not going to play you the package of what happened yesterday, because court is about to get underway, and Gerinal is, Judge Masipa is just making her way into the court. Gerinal is expected to continue his cross-examination of Mr. Dixon, the expert witness put forward by the stand. Let's go straight into the North Gauteng High Court for Day 25. Thank you.
Before we start this morning, I have just one thing to say. This is addressed especially to the court next door, that's GC, the overflow. Something disturbing has come to my attention. I believe the people in GC are unruly. They climb on top of the benches, they cheer, they boo, they do what they like. I just want to remind them, GC is an extension of this court. You behave as well as the people in this court. What rules go for this court go also for GC. The security who are looking after people in GC, please do your work. I don't want to have to hear this again. It is not an entertainment place. It is not a picnic nest. Stop drinking whatever you're drinking or eating whatever you're eating. Please restrain yourself. This is a court. In every court there are rules. Please just make sure that if you do not want to adhere to the rules. You are free to leave, and security will make sure that you leave. Thank you.
As the court pleases.
As the court pleases, my lady.
You're still under oath, Mr. Dixon?
Yes, my lady.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Mayor?
May it please the court, my lady. Mr. Dixon, I'm going to start with the demonstration of the bat and the gunshots. A couple of questions about that. You listened to the recording of the bat strikes that you made, am I right?
That is right, my lady.
And you also had the occasion to listen to the gunshots or gunshot that was fired on the first night, and that was recorded.
That is so, my lady.
Could you pick up a difference between the background sound of the two noises?
My lady, to the best of my recollection, the background sound is the same because there were frogs. It was quite quiet and there were frogs at the night. I didn't notice any other difference. On the very short clips, the recording the sound, I'm not sure whether all that. In the longer clips where there was a sound playing out, I heard frogs.
Yeah. Were you involved in the recording of this exercise or not?
My lady, I was not involved in the recording. My participation was to wield the bat in order to produce some sound which could be recorded.
Now, if I put to you that, and I'm putting it just as I do now, I listened to the sounds, and on listening to it, I formed the idea that the bat sounds were amplified. Can you comment on that? If one listens to the background noise.
My lady, what I know about the way the recording was done, the gunshots have a much higher cracking sound. The bat is lower, doesn't travel. The idea was to record the sound. If the sound engineer boosted something on his system to ensure a clean recording, that is what a sound engineer, I would assume, does. But I don't know to what degree it would have been.
Yeah. No, that's how I understood your evidence yesterday. I'm not saying that you're involved. Just testing it again. Now, you've indicated yesterday who were all present during the first demonstration. Who worked with the sound engineer of the people that were present there?
My lady, on the 20th of March, when I was present with the sound engineer had an assistant, and they, from what I could see, because I stood at the door, I wasn't at the table at 60 meters and 180 meters where they set up their equipment. So, to the best of my knowledge, it was those two people who produced the recordings and then played them back to us when we had finished with our tests.
Did you not yesterday say that Mr. Vormerans worked with him?
He was at the stages listening, my lady.
No, what do you mean? You said he was listening. Was he sitting with them?
He was sitting with them, my lady.
And listening, were they playing it back whilst you were busy?
I don't know about that, my lady. I was standing at the door. I have no knowledge of the exact sequence of events, what happened at each recording stage.
We've dealt with the fact that you also... Now, before we go there, could you please indicate to the court How many times and when you went back to the scene? The scene is now the crime scene at Silverwoods.
My lady, in preparation for that question, I went to my records. I was at Silverwoods on the 22nd of February. I was there on the 25th of February. I was there on the 1st.
Hold on. This is last year. You're talking
Last
about
year.
February last
My
year.
apologies, my lady. Last year on the 22nd of February, the 25th of February, the 1st of March, the 27th of September, 8th of November, on the 25th of March.
Of which year?
This year, my lady. It's in chronological order. And then on the